Hello, and welcome to ONET Academy. This previously recorded webinar is part of the ONET Academy webinar series, a set of online training presentations. This webinar recording, an ONET Academy briefing examining linkages between education, occupations, and pay, will start momentarily.
All right, with that, I want to turn things over to today's speaker, Dr. Janet Wall. Janet?
Gary, thanks an awful lot, and good afternoon, good morning to all of you, depending upon where you are in this fine country. My name is Janet Wall, and our webinar today is going to take a look at the linkages between education, occupations, and pay. I am an independent consultant, and one of my clients is Mayer & Mayer, and for them I develop and deliver webinars that are related to the ONET system in one way or another. Also do podcasts and audio recordings for them as well. My areas of particular interest are in career assessment, educational assessment, career development, program evaluation, education in general, and also technology and how that applies to those areas. I am a certified career development facilitator instructor and following the National Career Development Association's curriculum. So what I would like to do with our time together today is to show you the relationship between education and occupations, highlight the relationship between education and wages, and also show you how ONET and other government resources can help persons learn about various occupations and also how to help them gain the necessary education and training to have access to the wonderful occupations in the U.S. economy. So I want to start with this pie chart, which is put out by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it shows the expected educational attainment for the new jobs coming online in the U.S. economy, those that are expected to have high wages and also high growth over the next several years. And what you can see very easily by looking at this pie chart is the vast majority of the occupations that are going to be coming online that are high growth are going to require post-secondary education. You can see there about 24% are going to require some college, and another 63% may require a bachelor's degree or even more than that, with about 13% requiring just high school education or less. So basically, looking toward the future, we can see that education and training is going to be extremely important for the U.S. workforce. Now, I wanted to take a look at that information in terms of various occupations. So what I did is I went to Bureau of Labor Statistics and some other sites and wanted to take a look at the 30 fastest growing occupations in the U.S. economy. And I want to show you some of my findings with regard to that. But before I do that, we need to take a look at the legend that is going to be used on the next several slides. Basically, what is done is that they use dollar signs to indicate the expected wages for particular occupations. And so if you see $4 signs, it represents very high wages, and that is defined as greater than $43,600. $3 signs represents wages or earnings from $28,500 to $43,500. $2 signs are considered to be low, which is about $20,000 to $28,000. And then $1 sign, very low, so less than $20,000. And the point here is not to memorize those wage ranges or the dollar signs, but just to give you an indication that $4 signs is in the high category, 3 is high, 2 low, and $1 sign very low. All right, so having covered that, again, what I looked at are the top 30 fastest growing occupations according to the latest projections, which are 2006-2016. And here are the top 10 fastest growing occupations. And let's just go over one of these to show you the kind of information that's listed here. So the fastest growing occupation is projected to be network systems and data communications analysts. And you can see what the employment was in 2006 and what it's anticipated to be in 2016. And the percent change is 53%. And we can see that it has $4 signs, meaning that it's in the very high earnings category. And we can see further that it is going to be requiring a bachelor's degree for that occupation. The second occupation, personal and home health care aide, we can see it's growing at a 51% change. And it is in the very low category with $1 sign, and it requires short-term on-the-job training. Well, clearly I'm not going to go over each of these occupations, but what I wanted to point out is I went through this listing of the top 30, and every place I saw $4 signs or $3 signs, meaning the very high or the high average earnings, I marked it with a red arrow. So what we're seeing here are the top 10 fastest growing occupations. And so take a moment to look at the kinds of occupations that are listed there. These are the second 10. And these are the third 10. And I'm going to show you some summary information. All right, so having looked at the top 30 fastest growing occupations, what I found was that 20 have very high or high average salaries, so 20 of the 30. Of the 11 occupations that are marked as or associated with very high average salaries, you can see the educational requirements that are listed there. 1 requiring an associate's degree, 7 a bachelor's, 2 a master's, and 1 requires a professional degree. Of the 9 having high average salaries, the educational requirements are shown. 1 with a post-secondary vocational award, 2 with an associate's degree, 2 a bachelor's, and 4 a master's degree. If you take a look at the low or the very low average salaries occupations, most of those require some form of on-the-job training, either short-term or medium-term, possibly long-term on-the-job training. So we're seeing here most definitely an association between salary and education level, in particular for the top 30 fastest growing occupations. But that first pie chart that I showed you really looks at the situation overall. So we're seeing that education does in fact matter. And we have been singing that song for people for the last several years, that education matters if you want to have a living wage and you want to be able to succeed in the workplace and succeed in life. Education does matter. And so here is a chart that I think shows some good news in that the education levels of people in the workforce have in fact increased over time. So the chart, if you take a look at the horizontal axis, it runs from 1970 through 2005. And the vertical axis is the percent of people in each of those categories in the labor force, ages 25 to 64. All right, if you take a look at the situation in 1970, let's look at the dark blue area, bachelor's degree or higher. And we can see that in 1970, the percent of the workforce with a bachelor's degree or higher looks like at about 15% or so. And if you follow that along all the way through 2005, you can see that percentage has increased. The same kind of trend occurs for the some college or an associate's degree, that kind of dark green area. For high school graduates, no college, that percentage has shrunk over time somewhat. And then the light blue area, less than a high school diploma, that has shrunk as well. So there is some good news here that our workforce now in 2005, as compared to 2070, is a higher educated workforce. But one concern is that there are still a substantial percentage of individuals in the workforce without a high school diploma. That is a serious problem, and so serious that a number of organizations have been focusing on what to do about this dropout problem, to include Time Magazine in April of 2006 that focused on the fact that 3 of 10 students do not graduate high school in this United States. and also a report that I'm referencing here, Ready for What? Preparing Students for College, Careers, and Life After High School. You can obtain that document. It's an Education Week document. And I think it's really a wake-up call that each year in this country, about 1.2 million students do not graduate with their peers. And this next slide, for some reason, takes a while to come up. And I may have to force it to come up in just a moment. Gary, can you push the slide one forward? Thank you. Okay. The problem is very severe in certain parts of the country, and so bad that some of the schools are labeled dropout factories. And a dropout factory is defined as a school that where 60% of the individuals actually drop out from the 9th grade. So again, 60% dropout rate or more. So the dark blue states that you're seeing are those places where more than 20% of the schools are considered to be dropout factories. That is, again, having more than a 60% dropout rate from 9th grade. When you see the lighter blue areas, such as California and Texas, that's up to 20% of the schools have dropout rates of 60% or more. And the situation improves some with the lighter colors that you see on this map. But in this country, we have schools where the dropout rate is more than 60%. And that's really a serious issue for our workforce. All right, so who are the dropouts? Well, several studies have been conducted, and this is one that's the National Educational Longitudinal Study information or data. And what it did is it followed a cohort of about 25,000 eighth graders over a 12-year period, and that started in 1988. And what they found is that in this group, the total dropout rate was 18%. But when you look at it by socioeconomic status, which was primarily defined as income level, we see the dropout rate differs drastically. So quintile 1 is the lowest socioeconomic status level or income level, and we see that the dropout rate there is about 38%. And the situation improves somewhat as the socioeconomic status grouping improves or the income level increases. So we see at the highest quintiles, the highest socioeconomic status levels, the dropout rate is about 8%. But that 38% dropout rate for the lowest socioeconomic status level is a huge concern. Now, they also disaggregated this information according to whites, blacks, and Hispanics. And let's take a look first at the far right grouping of bars there, and that's the total section. And we see that the total dropout rate, the red bar, is 18%. We see that it's lesser for whites, it's much higher for Hispanics, and it's higher than average for blacks as well. Taking a look at the highest socioeconomic status levels, which are quintiles 4 and 5, right next to the total, we see again that the total dropout rate is 8%. We see that the white dropout rate is lower, the Hispanic dropout rate is lower, but the black dropout rate is much higher than that 8%. Moving over to the far left grouping of bars, we see a very different story. Here we saw that the total dropout rate was 38% in the lowest socioeconomic status category. And what we see here is that the whites have a higher propensity to drop out at the lower socioeconomic status levels as compared to Hispanics and blacks. So, again, disaggregating the information may help us indicate some solutions that were possible. And Lee Baker asked the question, were there equal amounts in each race or ethnic category? I would say probably not in this study, because the cohort was part of the National Educational Longitudinal Study, which I believe selected the group of individuals kind of at random from a larger database. So I'm sure it was representative of the percentages within the U.S. Population at that age level, but probably did not have the same amount, same percentage within each category. So representative of the national population at that age level, and it's not the same. We don't have the same proportions in each of those categories in the U.S. population. But going to that study, you can find out a whole lot more information. All right. The Alliance for Excellent Education actually concentrates a lot on on-time graduation and graduation rates and defining graduation rates for across all the states. And they're very concerned about the gap between and among Asians, whites, Hispanics, and African Americans in this country. And we can see this chart here shows the gap between the highest graduation rate category, which in this case is Asians, and African Americans, which have the lowest graduation rate. So the gap there is 27%. But I know a lot of you are more interested in knowing what's happening within your state, and this information can be obtained for your state. And I wanted to show you some examples. Here I have the chart that represents the graduation rate in Maryland, and we can see that the gap between the highest and lowest categories is 30%. And by the way, they update this information every year, so you would be able to find the most current information by going to the Alliance for Excellent Education's website. Here's Michigan. Michigan has a 41% gap. And Hawaii has only a 5% gap, but look at their graduation rates across all of the four categories. So again, you can find this information for your own state by going to the Alliance for Excellent Education website. So we have to take a look at not only the graduation rates overall, but also disaggregate by groupings as well. Now, you might be asking why concentrate on the dropout issue when we're talking about occupations and we're talking about the workforce. Well, there are a whole lot of reasons. First, the death rate is higher for those with less education. About 75% of people in state prisons are dropouts. About 59% in federal prisons are dropouts. Dropouts contribute to state and federal taxes at half the rate of high school graduates, and are more likely to be on public assistance. And they also have higher Medicare and Medicaid costs, and it costs our nation over $260 billion in lost wages, taxes, and productivity. So you may not think that this is a big deal, and maybe you live in a school district area or a state that has a pretty acceptable graduation rate. But in fact, this issue is taking money out of society, taking money out of your own pockets. It is also not developing our workforce in the way that it should be in order to be competitive on a global scale. All right, this is information that I put together from data that has come from the National Institute of Health, and it's data that just came out in May of 2008, and you can find that report on the National Institute of Health website. They don't provide these particular charts because I created them, but you can find the data and look at the information in more detail. But what I have here, and I'm going to show you 4 charts. These are 2 of the 4, and it represents the death rate of individuals ages 25 to 64, and the one on the left represents deaths per 100,000 for white females, and the one on the right, deaths per 100,000 for black females. And the kind of turquoise bar on the left represents the death rates for individuals with less than a 12th grade education. The dark blue represents high school grads. The white represents 13 through 15 years of education, and the black bar represents 16 or more years of education. And what's provided here is the information for 1993 and then updated through 2001. Okay, and again, deaths per 100,000, white females, black females, ages 25 through 64. And you can see for white females, the death rate has increased for people, and also for people with less than high school diploma, and also for those with a high school diploma. We see that for black females, the rate has sort of stayed the same, but it's much higher than for white females. But we're seeing here a definite relationship between education and death rate. All right, this is the female chart. And here's the male chart. And we can see right off, just visually, that the death rates are higher for males than they are for females. But the trend is the same in that the less education one has, the higher the death rate. And the chart on the left is white males. Chart on the right are black males. So again, this is a serious concern to individuals. There's a personal impact on the individuals with regard to education, and the personal impact being lifetime earnings. And let me just kind of give you an overview of this chart. If you take a look at the horizontal axis, the first four groupings of bars represent males. The right-hand four sets of four bars represents females. The dark purple bar, which is always on the leftmost side of each of the four groupings, represents dropouts. The next lightest represents high school graduates. The next lightest represents some college. And then the lightest bar represents those with a bachelor's degree or above. So let's take a look first at the leftmost four bars, which are white males. And we can see that the dropout bar, which is the one at the very far left, the lifetime earnings is just over $500,000. That increases with the amount of education. So those with a bachelor's degree or above, white males, have lifetime earning of about $2 million. That is somewhat reduced for blacks and Hispanics, and also for those that are in the other category. Taking a look at the female side, we see the same kind of trend, though, for each of the groups, that the more education you have, the higher the earnings. It's interesting to me that the report itself made no mention of the fact that females, say with the same education, and let's just do the white males versus white females, but you can do all the comparisons yourself. Those females with a bachelor's degree, lifetime earnings of $1 million, compared to white males having double that amount. But again, the report made no mention of that particular trend. But still, in each case, the more education, the higher your lifetime earnings are anticipated to be. All right, impact of graduation rates. Again, this is reviewing total lifetime income if the high school dropouts had actually graduated with their class. And this information also is provided on a state-by-state basis. And you may not find your state here because I couldn't fit all 50 onto a slide like this. But you can find it yourself going to the Alliance for Excellent Education. But let me give you just one example. We're talking here, let's do California. California, number of ninth graders, about 500,000. The estimated graduation rate is about, let's say, 71%. The estimated number of dropouts in California, about 155,000. And total lifetime earnings, additional income, if those dropouts would have graduated. And we're talking a really huge number here, $40 billion. And again, you can see that information for your state just by going to the Alliance for Excellent Education. And this gets updated periodically as well. All right, contribution to taxes. And this is important because taxes pay for schools, pay for roads, pay for infrastructure, and so on, a lot of the benefits that we get out of society. So again, the dark bar for each of these groupings represents dropouts, and the lighter the bar, the more education. So we have dropouts, we have high school graduates, some college, and bachelor's and above, just like that other chart. And we, just like the other chart also, the first four sets of 4 bars represent males, and then the second 4 represent female information. So again, looking at the far most left set of 4 bars, and that's for white males, we see that contribution to taxes, those that are dropouts contribute a total of $200,000. For those with a high school diploma, almost $400,000. Those with some college contribute even more, and those with a bachelor's degree also contribute far more in taxes than those with lesser amounts of education. And this trend is true also for all of the various groupings that are seen here. So the more education, the more they're contributing financially to our benefits in society. This next chart also is provided on a state-by-state basis, and again, your state may not be shown here just because there's not enough real estate here to show everything. But this chart shows the impact if we just increase the male high school graduation rate by 5%. So it's not even having everyone in the state graduate, it's just increasing it by 5%. And looking at the state of Alabama, annual crime-related savings would be $82 million. Additional annual earnings, $42 million, with a total benefit to the state's economy, $124 million. And California is a big winner here of $1.1 billion. And again, this information is obtainable by you for your own state. So again, education matters very much in this instance. All right, I found this particular report to be pretty interesting. What they actually did is they surveyed dropouts. So it's actually talking to the people who are not graduating and why did this happen. So it's not anyone's particular theories. It's actually information gathered from the dropouts themselves. And these were the top 5 reasons that they said they leave school. The classes weren't interesting, missed too many days and couldn't catch up, spent time with people not interested in school, had too much freedom, not enough rules, and was failing in school. And so for individuals who want to begin to have some successful interventions, they might want to take a look at this information and develop interventions around what the actual dropouts are saying. All right, let's take a look at the relationship between education, training, and unemployment, and the trend indicating that education matters continues. You may have seen this chart. It's from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And again, they produce it every year. On the right-hand side, we see median weekly earnings, and this is in 2007. Those with less than a high school diploma, median weekly earnings of about $428. And you can see the trend is upward in terms of median weekly earnings the more education you have. So for those individuals with a high school graduate, for example, gets significantly more than a dropout. Some with some college, no degree, have more. Those with an associate degree, more. Bachelor's degree, more, and so on. Well, the earnings aspect is really important, but with our changing economy and the fact that being employed really matters, we see that education level is also related to the unemployment level. So again, going back down to the less than high school diploma, we see the unemployment rate of about 7.1% for that group. High school graduate, the unemployment rate drops down considerably to 4.4%. Some college, no degree, even less. And again, the more education you have, the lower the unemployment rate. So if you get to the bachelor's degree and higher, that unemployment rate is really almost insignificant. It's so small. The average unemployment rate hovers around 5% these days. So again, we see a positive direct relationship between level of education and median weekly earnings, and an inverse relationship between education and unemployment rate. So again, this is pretty powerful information if you're trying to improve graduation rates within your particular school district or your state, to encourage individuals who are in the job hunting process. You can show them how much education matters in terms of their employability and also their salaries. All right, there are some ways to find out a variety of information that really relate to government resources and government information that's available. And I commend you to three particular sites: the America's Career Resource Network, of course, ONET, and also Career Voyages. And America's Career Resource Network actually utilizes the U.S. Department of Education's career clusters, 16 career clusters, and within those clusters are pathways. And you can actually take a look at these clusters and the pathways and find out information about the various pathways and occupations. So let's show an example. Here we're in the Architecture and Construction Career Cluster, and we're going to look at the construction pathway within that cluster. And what it shows is the employment by education level for the construction pathway. And we can see that most individuals have a high school diploma, some college, or extensive occupational preparation. Another large amount has actual high school diploma. But what is interesting is actually the earnings by education level. And we can see here that even in the construction pathway, the trend is the same, that the more education you have, the higher the earnings are. So here, taking a look at either the visually the bar chart above or the actual numbers below, still those with a bachelor's degree are earning much higher salaries, even in the construction pathway. All right, ONET has similar information. It is organized around job families, which are very similar to the career clusters. And so we go to ONET under the Defined Occupation section, and we're going to browse by job family, and we're going to look at the construction and extraction job family, which is similar to what we saw previously. And what it does is it brings up a listing of occupations within that job family. And again, to be consistent with what we just did, we want to take a look at the construction carpenters, and that happens to be an in-demand occupation, which means it's high growth, important to the U.S. economy, national security, or being transformed by technology in an important way. So we would click on construction carpenters, and what that does is it brings up some information on the wages and employment trends. And so we can see here that that occupation is growing on what they consider to be an average rate, 7% to 13%. Its median wages are $36,500, and the projected growth from 2000 to 2016 is that need will be 348,000 additional employees. Well, you can get that information at the state level as well, just by using the drop-down menu. So you can find out information about any of those occupations within the ONET system. I want to switch a little bit. This is still ONET related, but I want to switch to this notion of job zones. And those of you that are familiar with the ONET system know that each occupation in the ONET system has an associated job zone. And job zone is merely the amount of education, training, and experience that is associated with that occupation. And it goes from a job zone of 1, which is the lowest level, up through a job zone of 5, which is at the highest level. And so you can see here the easy, quick definitions for job zones. Job zone 1, occupations that need little or no preparation. Job zone 2, some preparation. 3 is medium preparation. 4 is considerable preparation. And 5 is extensive preparation. And you can go into the ONET system and find more detailed descriptions and definitions of these. But this gives you just a general feel for the trend being low of 1 through a high of 5. Going back to construction carpenters, again, to give you kind of a mental launch point for this, construction carpenters are job zone of 3, which is medium preparation. And you can see here that the overall experience is previous work-related skills, knowledge, or experience is required for these occupations. For example, an electrician must have completed 3 or 4 years of apprenticeship or several years of vocational training, and often must have passed a licensing exam in order to perform the job. In education, this job zone requires training in vocational schools, related on-the-job experience, or an associate's degree. Some may require a bachelor's degree. Okay, again, that's just to kind of give you an internal feel for what job zone 3 is, and just to help you, again, kind of a lynch point, that a job zone 5 occupation is going to have a higher education training requirement, and job zone 1 a lower education training requirement. All right, well, why focus on job zones? Well, this next chart, I think, is pretty interesting. This was a study that showed the relationship between job zone and salaries or earnings. All right, and there are several things I want to point out on this chart. But first, let's take a look at the axes. The horizontal axis represents the ONET job zone. So we see job zone 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. On the vertical axis, we have salary in dollars. So you can see it runs from a low of 0 up through $70,000. What we're seeing here in these gray bars are the average salaries for job zone 1 occupations, job zone 2 occupations, 3, 4, and 5. And remember, 5 job zone is the highest level of education, training, and experience, and 1 is the lowest level of education, training, and experience. So we see here, just by looking at these gray bars, the relationship between job zone and salary, and again, job zone reflecting education and training requirements. So we can see that the higher job zone occupations are commanding a higher salary. Now, clearly, I do want to point out that these are averages, so you're going to have some job zone 1 occupations that do command a much higher salary than some of the job zone 5 occupations. And, you know, that kind of comparison can be made between and among all of these job zone areas. But we're taking a look at averages, and the trend is really quite clear, that the more education and training you have, the higher the salary. All right, now 2 other things I want to point out on this chart that I think put it into some interesting perspective. The lower horizontal line is the poverty level, the official poverty level in the U.S., and that poverty level is $20,000. So you can see that on average, job zone 1 occupations just barely squeak above that poverty level. But again, the higher the amounts of education and training, the higher the job zone, the higher the salary, and the more above the poverty level individuals in that occupation will likely be. All right, the second horizontal line, the one that's higher up, is the line that represents self-sufficient wage. And self-sufficient wage is actually calculated by the U.S. government by taking a look at prices across about 2,600 U.S. communities and it is the recommended budget for a family of four, given 2 parents and 2 children, or 2 adults and 2 children. So again, that's sort of a family living wage. And you can see that on average, Job Zone 1 occupations, Job Zone 2 occupations, and even Job Zone 3 occupations on average don't meet that self-sufficient wage level. And so, again, I want to point out that these are averages, and you're going to find some differences when you take a look at the details. But here, if you're a Job Zone 1 or Job Zone 2 occupation, if you're head of household in that occupation, you're likely not to be earning enough to support a family. And so that's a pretty tragic situation. So, again, I think this chart is pretty telling that education really does matter, and the kind of occupation you have really does matter. Now, this information is a couple years old, and I'm not aware that this has been updated at this point. But as you know, the prices these days, certainly in the last few months, have skyrocketed. So that self-sufficient wage of $39,000 probably is not so accurate any longer, especially with the prices of gas and food and all that. All right, one of the great things is that in this country we have so many opportunities to actually obtain the necessary education and training to have a living wage and get into occupations that do have a salary that will support a family. And some of these are apprenticeships, certifications, community colleges, vocational and specialty schools, four-year colleges, and graduate institutions. And I want to help you find those kinds of opportunities for the people that you're working with. First, searching for apprenticeships by state. You can go to the Department of Labor, Education, and Training Administration site and find, just by clicking on the state's name, you can find contact information for the apprenticeship programs that are offered within the state. A second tool is for certifications. Certifications are generally done by occupational area. And here is a certification finder, and you can actually enter this tool a variety of different ways, but I'm going to concentrate on the search by occupation method. And here I have outlined, first it asks to select an occupational group, and I have selected legal as the occupational group. And then I would click on next, and then it asks me to select an occupation within that occupational group. And for purposes of demonstration, I've selected paralegals and legal assistants. And by clicking on next, you can see that there are a number of certifications that come up that are related to that particular occupation. And so by clicking on any of these, you can find out more information about who offers that certification, what the requirements are, the costs are, and so on. So as you can see, that tool is extremely simple to use and can really assist an individual in obtaining a certification and even selecting an occupation to get into because of the certification's availability. Finding community colleges, simple as pie. Going to that site, just click on the state in which you're wanting to find a community college. For demonstration purposes, I've selected Minnesota. Click on the state, and up comes a listing of community colleges within the state of Minnesota. And clearly, I have not been able to put all of the community colleges up here. There are many, many more. But on the slide, I have a few to show you the kind of information that does come up. And again, from here, you can find out the admissions requirements, the kind of programs they have, and so on, contact information. General programs. Here's using the literacy directory, which is such a simple tool. You enter your location. You can do that either by putting in a zip code or city and state. And I put in the zip code 60629, which is Chicago, and find programs within 5 miles, but you have several options here on the drop-down menu. And then what are you looking for? Help with reading or writing, studying for the GED, finding an official GED test center, learning English as a second language, help with math. Well, I've checked off help with reading and writing, learning English, and help with math. So once I do that, I click on search, and up comes, in this particular search, 43 locations, and I've got just 3 of them listed here. And here you have a listing of the centers, their location, their website, details about what it offers, a map to help you get there, and even driving directions. So, just about everything you need to find out what kind of services can be made available to you. College Opportunities Online. This is from the National Center for Education Statistics. You can select a state in which you want to find post-secondary opportunities, or you can even select by region. You can see that looking at the southeast in the dark blue, if a person is interested in finding an educational opportunity, definitely wants to be in the southeast somewhere, you would click on that dark blue region and search that way. Or you can, again, as I said, search by a specific state. So I have selected here the state of California, and let's say I'm interested in a nursing program, and so I would put that information in, and up comes a listing of the various state institutions that provide some instruction in various nursing specialties. And again, here I just click on the institution's name. I can find out what the tuition is, scholarship information, admissions information, type of program, and so on. Extracurricular activities, just about everything you want to know about an institution. So from here, a person then can make a decision as to which programs they want to get into, which offer what they need, which have the best cost benefits to them, and so on. So again, an extremely simple tool to find educational opportunities. America Service Locator. Similar to the literacy directory, you just put in your zip code or your city and state and the distance from your location that you're willing to look at. And here I put in Denver, Colorado. I want to find something within 25 miles. And up comes the various centers that meet my criteria, and in this instance there were 12 of them. And look at Denver Stapleton Workforce Center, which is the first one, and I see its location. I see that it's a comprehensive one-stop career center. I see that it's 3 miles away from my designated location, and I can get a map and directions. But it also tells me, just by clicking on the center's title, the kinds of services that it offers. Here's just a partial list. I can learn new job skills, improve my current job skills, learn about the world of business, prepare for the GED, improve my English, improve my reading, writing, and math. I can assess my reading and math skills, learn about jobs and careers that might be suitable, learn about jobs in demand and rates of pay. So again, just a partial list of the kinds of offerings in this center. All right, so all this information then pulled together. My intent was to show you the relationship between education and occupation and between education and salary, and also suggest to you ways that you can utilize when you work with your students or clients to help them get the education and training to maximize their salary and to obtain entry to occupations that might provide them a living wage. All right, and so what I'd like to do now, since I haven't seen very many questions come in, give you the opportunity to enter some questions into the chat box, and hopefully I'll be able to provide some answers or direct you to places where you can get the answer. And while I'm waiting for that, I do want to mention that we have many supporting webinars that we do. As Gary mentioned early on, this is being recorded, and also you'll be able to access the recording and listen to it or refer a colleague to it. He said that probably by close of business tomorrow it'll be up on onetacademy.com along with the PowerPoint slides. So if you're wanting to review some of the data again, if you want to use it for any kind of presentations or workshops that you do, you merely need to download the slides and you're good to go. We periodically do these live webinars, but again, we do, there are recorded ones as well. And some of the titles are listed here. We do a number of them on various ONET assessments. ONET tools for job seekers and students, for military and transition, which I did 2 webinars yesterday. ONET for the older worker in transition, how ONET is updated, keeping pace with the fastest growing, largest employment occupations, new and emerging occupations, and similar ones. So if you go to onetacademy.com, you'll see the recorded webinars that have been done over the last several years, actually, and you can access them all. So I don't see any questions coming in. So in that instance, I want to thank you so much for your attention in this webinar, and I hope that you've been able to gain some wonderful resources that you can utilize. And I see something coming in. Which resources are best for vocational exploration with clients that don't have a clue as to their personal skills and attributes? Well, a simple one would be to actually use assessment. That would be a very important thing to do in the intake process, as you have a client that comes in who really doesn't know what they want to do, and give them an interest inventory as an example. That's an excellent place to start. And then from their interest, you can then go to the ability profiler and find out what their strengths and weaknesses are and which occupations tend to match up with that person's profile. So I would recommend if you're working with someone who really doesn't have any idea about themselves, is first to help them find out about their characteristics and then match them up to occupations that have similar characteristics. Which online assessments are detailed and effective in this respect? Well, I'm not in a position to be recommending any particular assessment, excepting for giving consideration to the Department of Labor's assessment instruments, the interest profiler, work importance locator profiler, and the ability profiler. But there are many assessments out there that you would want to consider, match up to your audience, make sure it has high technical qualities such as reliability and validity, make sure it's easy to use, it's giving you the information you want, and so on. I have a book that I have written. It's called What Do I Like to Do? 101 Activities to Identify Interests and Plan Careers. And in there, I actually have a checklist that you can utilize to compare instruments according to several various important factors, some of which I just rattled off, being audience, ease of use, and so on, and the technical qualities. So you might want to utilize that book and that particular checklist to help you in your decision-making process. And it also reviews a number of interest inventories as well and provides you the characteristics, along with a lot of activities that you can use. Some very short interest inventories and activities that you can use to help people understand what their interests are. Okay. There's a question from Gary in terms of confirming attendance. And I do not see any other questions coming in. So, again, I want to thank you so much for being with me today. I hope you gained some good information that you can utilize with your clientele. And I look forward to seeing you in future webinars. Have a great day, everyone.
This concludes today's session. I just want to reiterate and thank everyone for attending our webinar, and we look forward to seeing you on future ONET sessions. Have a good day, everyone.